All right, well, the battle in Washington continues to intensify on hot topics such as health care, Afghanistan, and media bias.
Here to talk about all of that and more is Republican Congressman Brian Bilbray of the 50th District, a good friend of our show. Congressman, great to see you again.
Good morning.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. We're going to start with Afghanistan. The nation and really the world right now, all eyes on President Obama. He's got a big decision ahead of him on whether or not to send more troops over there. A lot of people criticizing him, saying that he is taking too much time. Even former Vice President Dick Cheney had some words this week saying that he needs to make a decision and get to it. But, you know, this is a very, very big decision. Don't you think he needs to take time to make this decision?
Well, it's a very big decision, and he does need to make the right decision. The problem is when you got men and women in harm's way, and think of it like the movie where the cavalry needs to come. You need to let them know that relief is coming, especially the bad guys. So it is a tough decision. He's also the decision that he's trying to straighten out this non-military problem of the government in Kabul. A lot of stuff that was done wrong in the last few years. And I think his problem is he's trying to sort of force the Kabul administration to sort of be more flexible by saying you may not get troops to protect you. The trouble is those troops are not just to protect the Kabul government, it's to protect our own men and women who are there. So he's really running a very dangerous line here, but that's why he's the president. That's why he's the commander-in-chief. But like Dianne Feinstein said, McChrystal is the expert, and when he says, please, this is what I need to fulfill my mission, which is also protecting his own troops, send me those troops. He doesn't have long to keep continuing to talk about it or think about it. He needs to take action. That's part of being the commander-in-chief.
McChrystal, you're referencing is the commanding general on the ground there, Stanley McChrystal, who says we need 40,000 more troops. You agree with that?
I think that you need it for the military, but I think that what's being missed here, I'm the ranking member on procurement. We forgot about all of the things, about all the money that's been wasted with the so-called nonprofits in Afghanistan that actually helped with corruption and problems. We even looked at the Constitution, which eliminates the ability that the 80% of the people that live in the rural area will never have an elected official. We were so obsessed with having a strong central government that we didn't create mayors and governors. The governors and the mayors are appointed by the president. Can you imagine how the people in San Diego would feel if Washington was appointed? Well, I better not give them any ideas. Right. I mean, but that's the kind of thing that you got to get back and do some basics, not just the military option. It's the civilian option that has failed in the last year, not the military option, but it has now put the burden on the military.
And as this debate now about building Afghanistan society continues, there's also a debate about American society, specifically on health care, the big debate right now. A lot of the talk is about this idea of a public option trigger, which essentially would be, instead of having a government plan right now, there would be a plan in place in case the health care reform doesn't work, so then a public option trigger would be brought in. Do you agree with that? A lot of Republicans do.
I think that there's a real problem with the fact of not recognizing that we're creating the crisis. One government action is creating the crisis. If you mandate that every American in America no longer has a choice, we're going to force you to have health insurance if you live in the United States, creates a monopoly for the existing insurance companies. That crisis then says, well, how do we break the monopoly? And one of the things they're talking about is this public option. There's a whole lot of other issues about why don't we look at the credit union option, the co-ops, and change government regulations to allow consumers to pool to keep that. So those are those issues. But when we talk about it, can we afford what we're promising? You know, got to understand that we're not talking about addressing the issues like tort reform, which people talk about, but anyone who's provided health care to the public, like I have when I was a county supervisor, knows this is a big one. Things like, why do we continue to let pharmaceuticals advertise prescription drugs? And I hate to say this on television because you guys make a lot on advertisement, but that money could be going into research and keeping the price down, but because one company advertises, the others have to do it. Those are the kind of things that no one's talking about in Washington. So a lot of these issues about reducing cost hasn't been talked about. Now, and I'll tell you, Democrat, Republican, and Independent tell me, well, we talk about two-thirds of this can be paid for by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, then why aren't we doing that first and proving that we can be trusted before we start expanding promises that Washington has made? And I think as we saw with the bailout, with the stimulus, a lot of these promises get made. We write checks, but then we don't go back and correct the problem that created it.
All right, Congressman, switching gears now. We're talking about this situation happening right now between Fox News and, of course, the White House right now. The White House not granting some special interviews, Fox News has asked for. But he is the President of the United States. They are the White House press, don't they have the right to say, no, I don't want to do that interview? Your feelings on this?
Whoa. You know, this is where you're trying to make the transition from being a campaign to being an administration. It's no longer a political situation. This is governance. This is a responsibility of being president. And that means talking with people you like or don't like. But when you have these pools, when you have these gatherings, these are public gatherings. This is totally different. They don't have to give them an interview and give them that private time, but they darn well can't say, if we don't like the way you are reporting, we can cut you off. That is a huge step away from the tradition that the media be able to pull together. And let me say, well, I'm very, very proud that all the other stations, or at least most of the other media, has said, wait a minute, this is a precedent that we haven't seen before and we don't want it to go now. Even a very popular president like this has to understand that he's the president for everybody and he needs to work with everybody. And even though his political guys, and I don't think President Obama's making the decision, but his political advisors are.
All right, well, thank you very much for sharing your views. Spirited discussion as always. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Thank
Good to have
you
you back in San Diego.
Appreciate your time. All right, of course, for more information, you can just go to our website, San Diego 6. We have all of Congressman Brian Bilbray's contact information via his website.
All right, coming up.